I wondered if like by bringing in those elements of like someone not being heard and like, the mother's love of a child and all these different things, if then people could start finding their own connections to these kinds of stories, which then would change the way that they understand.
Let's start talking about your film because we're actually really excited to talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so you created this short film called His Mother, your
Yes.
directorial debut. It is wonderful. Me and Olivia both watched it. We loved it.
We did.
It is a super intense story of a mother who, after receiving a deeply unsettling email from her son, races through traffic in a desperate attempt to reach him before tragedy strikes. I want to know what inspired you to explore this narrative from the mother's perspective, and how did you navigate balancing empathy for her character with the seriousness of the situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess the reason, obviously this film tackles a subject that we're very used to talking about in the US.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately a tragedy that we have become so used to happening all the time. And I think that for me, in the conversations, I felt like me and my peers or the world or, we're having around these kinds of tragedies, I felt like there was often like an oversimplification of it. And, I think we, in the face of tragedy, as humans, we try and like categorize and like simplify in order to make sense of. And for me, I thought a lot about the parents in these situations, both of the victims and also of the perpetrator. And as a person, I've always been interested at like what point do we deem someone like no longer worthy of empathy, especially in regards to their parents, and like at what point does like what someone's actions then like revoke also their family's right to like have emotions toward them or mourn them or love them. So for me, I think placing this story in the mother's point of view was a way to sort of like humanize a figure in these stories that's often misunderstood. And I wondered if in humanizing her and bringing that story to the forefront, if then, if the audience had to live through those moments with her, what kind of conversations would come out of that? And would it change the kinds of conversations we were having surrounding them? And,
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that, but like that's sort of why I said it from her point of view and also in real time.
I mean, you are again opening up a discussion for that. And of course, like it does happen a lot and it's really unfortunate, but I think your film could change the way people view the perpetrator of school shootings and their families, because in a way they're also victims as well. This movie is really important for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm glad. I think also it's like, there's a lot of different parts of the film that I tried to think a lot about, this idea of putting someone like being in someone else's shoes. And, a lot of the film, and I wonder if this resonated with you guys, but, it's centered around a woman and a lot of people are not listening to her. And I wondered if like by bringing in those elements of like someone not being heard and like, the mother's love of a child and all these different things, if then people could start finding their own connections to these kinds of stories, which then would change the way that they understand the real life tragedies.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, like the emotional weight of this is intense and immense. I'm curious how you worked with your lead actor, Bethany Ann Lind, who plays Julie, to kind of ensure a performance that captured the complexity of the situation. Because she really went from like denial, realization, and then eventual kind of grief.
Yeah, no, so Bethany took me a long time to find her. She is so talented and I think she did such an amazing job. And I mean, I guess I didn't touch on this earlier. You did ask like how to sort of navigate a subject like this with sensitivity. I did a lot of research and I had a lot of conversations in order to make sure that I was approaching the subject with sensitivity and with as much understanding as I could. Obviously, it's not my story, so I tried to be really aware of that. And with Bethany, it was we had many, many conversations. I sent her a lot of stuff to read, to watch, people to talk to about these kinds of things. And ultimately, when working with her, it's kind of a hard role to ask someone to buy into because it's so far away from a lot of people's experiences. So it's like your brain doesn't even really want to have to go there. So her and I were trying, you know, I went to acting school, and one of the things I took away from acting school was this idea of an adjusted point of view. So like, how do you play a character who's like so far away from you in experience or in opinion? And for me, it's like always about finding a way in. And with Bethany, the way that we worked together and the way we found her way in was just by connecting, having her connect to the script as a mother and really thinking about her own children and forgetting about like the rest. And I think when she dropped in to really just thinking about the love that she has for her own children, then the rest of it could just sort of like unfold through the course of things, like through piecing together what was happening, the denial, the trying to be heard, and then allowing for like that sort of like progression to just happen naturally towards the end. And we shot it in chronological order for that reason, because I wanted her to be able to go through that arc and not just be like, hey, you're shooting the last scene first and good luck, you know?
Yeah. Her performance was phenomenal. I was like blown away by what she can convey, like even in the car, like that's the only setting we see is the car. It was like, yeah, I was blown away by what she could produce.
I know she did a really beautiful job. I'm like so in awe of her, and it was tough. I mean, she had to like really drive in that car for 3 days. Like it was a lot to juggle. She's really using like the whole system. I had all the actors really calling in because I wanted that environment to be as real as possible.
That's amazing. That was literally one of my questions. Like, what was like putting it all together? But to know that you did that like as real as possible, that's like so cool. And I feel like adds a more realistic element to the film that's definitely known and shown. My next question is, your father, Pietro Scalia, is widely regarded as one of the greatest film editors of recent decades. You know, we have Block Hawk Down, Gladiator, American Gangster, and my personal favorite, Good Will Hunting. And your mother, Teresa Sparks, also a few credits on IMDb. Were you drawn to the film industry because of their careers from an early age, or did your interest develop later on in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's, of course, like their influence has impacted me without a doubt. I mean, you know, I think I'm a product of the environment that I grew up in, and I'm incredibly lucky that like I grew up with parents who not only work in the film industry, but have such a love of film that it first and foremost in our household came from like such an appreciation and love of the art, which was really cool. And like, you know, my parents showed me so many films from such a young age, and my mom also really loves theater, and we saw so many plays, and like I just saw so I was they opened up a world for me that, you know, I don't, yes, if I didn't grow up with those parents, maybe it would be different, but they showed me so much, and I think that's a huge reason why I have such a love for it. And now I'm pursuing a career in that. And it's also like, you know, they warned me. They're like, it's really, really hard. Like it's not an industry that's easy to just like make happen. You have to like be willing, if you're gonna, you know, jump in, you have to understand like how difficult it is. And I think that having that, you know, perspective was also a gift. You know, so many of my family friends worked in the industry, and like they're not necessarily like, you know, front of camera, or like they're people who work across the industry. So like my family friends are like, you know, production designers or grips, or we know they span sort of all of that. So knowing really what goes into making a film was also, you know, beyond just loving movies, was a gift that my parents gave me. So I feel really appreciative from that. And also it's like really cool. Like my dad edited my short. My mom is a writer, and she read so many drafts and gave me so much input. My brother's a production designer. I shot it in Atlanta so he could help me like put it all together. And, you know, I was trying to do all this crazy stuff, and he was being like, no, like this is your first movie. Like you have to think practically. So like to be able to work with my family as collaborators is really cool. And like that for me is very special.
Did you find that it informed your decision making as a director, especially in terms of pacing and the structure in your own film?
My parents being in the film industry?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't think so, but maybe subconsciously. I think that I've been thinking a lot about this and like, in terms of like what I'm going to make next. And like, I learned a lot from my first short and understanding like what kind of narratives I want to tell and maybe breaking the mold of a typical narrative. And I think that I realized that a lot of what I watch a lot of short films. I was really curious about the medium of short films. I tried to think a lot about like what works and what doesn't. And I knew I had 13 minutes sort of to make this story come to life. And I thought a lot about like how could I keep the audience interested? How could I keep the momentum going? And it's actually not my parents being in the industry that informed all of that. It was actually going to an acting school here in New York called William Esper, where a large part of the first year is this independent activity. And the idea of an independent activity is like you have to do something very difficult while also dealing with like something that's like incredibly emotional and a time constraint. So it was like I think learning how to use that as an actor, I was like, oh, that's I saw so many people come to life in a really interesting way. And I wondered how I could incorporate that in a short and if that would allow for something interesting to happen.
I did want to touch on the setting quickly. The film
Yeah.
takes place largely in a car, I think the majority of it, with Julie making frantic phone calls and dealing with the obstacles of the road. Were there any challenges that you faced directing those scenes, like in such a confined and tight space, while still trying to keep the narrative dynamic?
Yeah, it was funny because every person who was like a seasoned like producer or filmmaker who I asked input, they were like, you're insane for thinking that you can do this. And for multiple reasons. They're like, one, it's really hard to make the inside of a car interesting. And if you're stuck there's like only a few angles you can achieve. And I was like, oh, because I thought I was being really smart. I was like, this is my first short film. It's in a car. I'm saving so much money. Like, this is like, you know what I mean? They teach you like, oh, confined space, like whatever. It was not the case. But I thought I was being intelligent in that choice. I realized it was really a novice idea. But so many people were like, do not film it in a car, try and think about it somewhere else. Or I had a lot of people telling me to film it on a sound stage with LED screens. So like you have like the projection behind it, which I was also like, no, because I felt really strongly about it being filmed practically, both for the performance and for like the feeling of the film. I'm really glad that I made that choice. But of course it came with like the difficult things where yes, it was like my DP is like, he's probably like 6'4". He's like squished like with a giant camera. Then like the sound guys back there, the AD, I'm like in the trunk. Like it was crazy, but it was fun because I felt like I was so lucky to have such an amazing team with me and everyone was kind of like, let's just do this. And it was really, really fun. And that part was really exciting, but it was definitely tough. It was definitely tough.
Yeah, it definitely added to like the intensity of the film for me personally, because it's like such a small confined space and you're like, where is she gonna go?
No,
What is she gonna
absolutely.
do?
And I was worried too. I was like, oh wow, like, we're in such a tight car, like it's so close on her face.
Yeah.
And then I sort of like, is that the wrong choice? But again, I guess this is my first time. I was kind of like, let's just do it. And it added, I think, to the like elements of claustrophobia. Like I really wanted to be specific in the choices I was making, but sometimes those like accidental things really added a layer that was unexpected, which was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so lastly, our podcast is called Dial M for Movies. So we wanted to ask you some rapid fire questions that we call movie speed dial.
Oh my God,
So
amazing.
we'll give you a category and you give us a movie that you'd have on speed dial for it.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Start
The
thinking.
Okay, so the first one, a movie you dial up when you need some comfort.
God, these are such good questions. Now I'm nervous. Okay, a comfort film, Along Came Polly.
Love.
Actually, no, The House Bunny.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah, The House Bunny. That's a great one.
Love it. A movie that's your all-time favorite and you'll stick by no matter what.
Blade Runner.
Amazing choices. A movie you dial up that's a guilty pleasure.
Oh, guilty pleasure. Dang, let me think. This is so embarrassing. This movie called Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging.
No, oh my God.
I love that. That is
Aaron,
a
that's
fantastic.
yeah.
really goes
This
a wide range.
podcast loves that movie. Aaron Taylor Johnson's magnum opus, in my
Yeah.
It
personal opinion.
absolutely is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is. The amount of times I've watched that movie, I think I could actually watch it and quote the entire thing through.
Definitely 100% agree. I unironically listen to Ultraviolet all the time.
Oh, it is literally in my playlist.
Me too. And then I got really deep on TikTok and I was like looking up Ultraviolet and there was like,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, this song is still banging. That's
So good. It's so good.
Absolutely. That is
Um,
not a guilty pleasure, by the way. That's just like it could literally be your favorite.
That's a good
It is
movie,
valid. We support
period.
it.
Yeah. Okay, a movie you dial up from the golden age of cinema.
Golden age of cinema. Wow. Well, there's so many different golden ages of cinema, I would say.
I'd say like the 1920s to like the 1950s.
Okay. The Apartment.
Amazing choice. And then a movie you dial up when you need a good cry.
You know, every single movie makes me cry when I watch it on the plane. I think it's
So true.
I think it's the lack of oxygen. But recently, it's just so embarrassing. I watched Interstellar on the plane and I was bawling my eyes out. And I was like, wow, if anyone knew that I was crying this hard, that would be so embarrassing.
Yeah. Me with
So
Inside Out. on the
Yes.
plane.
Oh my God. You know what? I take it back. That movie Soul, the Pixar film,
Yeah.
that makes me cry.
I have
Yeah.
yet to see it. I need to, like, everyone talks about how good it is. And I'm
No
like,
way.
I need to
Very,
find time
very
for it.
good.
Absolutely. I have one more because I'm actually curious on what your answer would be, but a movie you dial up that was released in the last year or two.
Last year or two. Okay. Last year, there's two. I just saw The Substance and
Oh,
I loved it.
it was so
Insane.
good. It was so
Absolutely.
good.
So fun. And I was like, I love body horror. So I was like, was amazing. So that, and then La Chimera, maybe. I really love her films.
Josh O'Connor stands up in here.
Yes. Such
Yeah,
a
he's
beautiful
great.
story. I loved it.
Such a beautiful story. And she's such a beautiful director. It's like,
Yeah.
Unreal.
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it took me until the second watch to really appreciate it for what it was. But now
Yeah.
it's like definitely one of the best in, I think, in the 2020s, like for sure up there.
Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of good movies recently. Now I'm like, I like this game, but I'm like, I have so many answers.
We literally have more if you want to keep
I would love to keep going. It's actually fun for me because I'm like, watch all these movies later.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Amazing. Do you want to take it away, Olivia?
Sure. I like this. A movie you dial up with a score or soundtrack that you could listen to on repeat.
That's a really good one. Heat,
Oh, yes.
great score.
Banger.
A movie you dial up that is a go-to from your favorite director.
Female Trouble. John Waters is one of my favorite directors of all time. I love his movies. I guess Female Trouble or Crybaby. I've been watching Crybaby a lot. Young Johnny Depp is like amazing. So
Yeah. Love
Okay,
it. That movie's so campy.
so campy.
A movie you dial up that's lesser known but a personal favorite.
Yeah, I could have said John Waters for that, I guess. I don't know if this is lesser known, but it's lesser known for this very famous director's films,
Okay.
if that works.
Yes.
There's a film called After Hours, which is a Scorsese film, it's a big film, but it's like lesser known, I would say, than his. And it almost doesn't feel like what you would think a Scorsese film is. And I love it. It's just such a great, it like takes place over one night of this guy wandering around New York City. And I think it's amazing.
Love those kinds of movies.
Yeah.
A movie you dial up when you're hosting a party or hanging out with friends.
There's so many. Like I would either go for like a horror film like Blair Witch Project, or I would go for like John Tucker Must Die.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Love. Yeah.
It's on one of those sides of the spectrum.
It depends which friends you're hanging out with.
Literally. Yeah.
Depends on the mood of the night. Yeah.
Yeah.
A movie you dial up when you need a good laugh.
A good laugh. I said the ones I think that I laugh at the most. Like House Bunny makes me laugh so much.
Hilarious.
It's so funny, and people don't give it enough credit. She's so funny too.
Yeah. Anna
Oh,
Faris is
Anna
a
Faris
comedic
is-
genius.
Yeah, she is absolutely a comedic genius. Good laugh. Maybe something like Adam Sandler, like Happy Gilmore, something like that. Those make me laugh. I miss
classic.
movies or like Dodgeball. I miss movies like that.
Definitely. And then our last one, a movie you dial up when you need some inspiration?
I would say I love Antonioni films, the Italian director. One movie I watch all the time is called Le Clise. And it is with Alain Delon and Monica Vitti, and it's something I always come back to. And I don't know why, but I always, when I'm feeling stuck, it's something I always watch. So I'd say that one.
Amazing. Amazing answers.
I know.
We really went across the board with that.
Yeah.
But
Well, it has been so much fun talking to you about movies and about your movie, His Mother. We loved it. It's amazing. And we can't wait to see what you do next, truly.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your
thanks
time.
for having me. This has been so fun, and I'm so excited to like listen to all your other episodes and stuff.
Oh, stop.
Oh.
No, I'm serious. This has been so fun.
Appreciate it.